And now on the line is Frank Houghton. Frank is the principal investigator of the Tobacco, Alcohol and Gambling Research Group at the Technological University of the Shannon TUS, and he was on this program on Nair FM only a month ago as well. Frank, welcome back to Nair FM.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, Frank, we're going to talk today about the National Lottery, the Office of the National Lottery Regulator, and scratch cards. Frank, before we talk about this, can you just tell me to start off, what is the difference between the National Lottery and scratch cards? Because when I go into a shop at the till, I see loads of scratch cards at the tills, but I don't notice the lotto as much. And admittedly, I'm a person who never buys these things in the first place, you know. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the scratch cards that you generally see in shops are actually run by or operated by the National Lottery. So I can completely understand your confusion. It's essentially what you're seeing, I suppose, is a very visible form of their marketing. It's run by the same company that does sort of the weekly or twice weekly draw, and it also is the same company through which we can buy Euro Millions tickets as well. So it's all kind of part of the same bundle, if you know what I mean.
Okay. I don't know when the lotto started. I have a vague recollection in the 80s or 90s that something happened, and then over the years, scratch cards became a lot more visible. Like, is the National Lottery on the go decades, or what's the story, Frank?
Yeah, what happened was prior to the sort of mid-80s, one of the main sort of popular forms of gambling, I suppose, was the Irish hospital sweepstakes. However, my understanding is there were some revelations about some sort of seriously dodgy activity in relation to that organization. So that effectively closed down. And in that gap, the government decided to set up the National Lottery. I think it was roughly around 1986, 1987. And it proved, far more popular than initially anticipated, or at least that's in the reports that I've read. So from there, it really has grown from strength to strength. A couple of years ago, and it's important to realize just how big it is. A couple of years ago, the gross income for the National Lottery topped €1 billion.
God, that's unreal, isn't it? I didn't think it was that much. No, I wasn't sure if I was imagining it, because I did have a vague recollection. Like, I was born in 1981, and I did have a vague recollection when I was 8 or 9 or 10 years old that the lotto was kind of a new thing, and it was kind of popular. You know what I mean? But I was so young, I didn't know. Like, I've never once bought an average lottery ticket, the ones where you write the numbers. I think I might have bought 2 scratch cards about 30 years ago. That was all. Okay, go on now.
No, you're not. I can tell you now, you're not that typical. One of what I see as the dangers of the National Lottery is just how pervasive it is, and how it really isn't seen as gambling. Quite a few people are against gambling, but the National Lottery has been expert at positioning itself and marketing itself as though it's not gambling. So even people that would sort of report not gambling often do purchase scratch cards or play the National Play. I mean, even hear the words that I'm using, or gamble on the National Lottery. We have this blind spot.
Yeah, and on this issue, you have published a number of papers on the National Lottery and scratch cards, haven't you, Frank? Can you tell me more? Can you give me a summary of the papers you've written on this area, Frank, and then tell me what you were calling for?
Yeah, absolutely. If I run through them fairly quickly, one paper we did was we looked at the official National Lottery YouTube site and looked at the videos that were held on there and found them to be really quite child friendly. A lot of child friendly imagery, which we were very concerned with. I suppose one of the most stark was we also looked last Halloween at the games, the sort of online games on the National Lottery website. As I say, it was around Halloween, and I can only describe them as what I'd say as, Harry Potter-esque. They were full of sort of googly eyes, witches' brooms, wizards' hats, all the cauldrons, all of the stuff that I think undeniably we think of as children, magic at Halloween, that kind of thing. We did another study where we looked at the timing of the draws over a 2-year period. And, they basically, historically, and up until very, very recently, they would stop the Saturday evening kids movie to show the lotto draw, which is undoubtedly a form of marketing. No matter how anyone tries to package it up, it's clearly advertising. We then, we were very concerned about underage gamblers. People who start to gamble underage are more likely to have a trajectory that ends up in problem gambling. And we were very, very concerned about that. And we know there's various online protections, but me and my colleagues, we were concerned that, well, how hard is it for a child to actually register, pretend to be an adult and have an online account? Because we're also very, very aware that the huge growth area at the moment for most of the gambling firms, including the National Lottery, is online. So another study we did was we basically tried to set up about 60 or so fake online accounts. We figured, okay, how can a kid do this? Okay, so they can get a picture of sort of grown up off the internet, and they can probably take a photograph of a passport or more likely a driving license. And then they could, use a fairly, standard sort of design application on their computer to put the picture onto the passport and then upload that. And worryingly, we were successful in 55% of cases. So, from our perspective, their online protections, were patently inadequate. But I suppose the most recent, we managed to get another paper published just in the last few weeks. And again, we found the results on this extremely worrying. What we did was we went out to 9 national schools in the Republic of Ireland, mostly around counties Limerick, Tipperary, and Clare, near where I'm based. And we went into basically from first class up. And we showed children, and we got 671 children. We showed children a series of, sort of 5 or 10 logos. Logos that we figured they probably would know, for example, like McDonald's, and others that, maybe a car logo that we thought they might not be so familiar with. But hidden in amongst these other logos, we had the National Lottery logo. And I suppose it was really worrying for us that among 12-year-olds, 85% of children could recognize the National Lottery logo. Even children as young as 7, 40% could recognize it, and they had to write it. We didn't give them a list of company names, and they had to pick it. They had to write it themselves, so they had to recall it and write it. We also asked them about the taglines, and worryingly enough, among 12-year-olds, even 40% of them could tell you the Lotto tagline. It could be you. So I mean, it's really hard to see this as anything other than children being primed for gambling into the future. We really feel that the Lotto logo needs to be changed, and it needs to be changed urgently. If you think about it, it's this sort of anthropomorphic, smiling, friendly green star that occasionally does a pirouette and almost dances. It's just hugely child friendly. And that's one of the reasons why we named our study Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Do you know?
And am I right in saying, Frank, that buying the National Lottery National Lottery scratch cards and any kind of things like this, they're illegal for people under 18, are they?
They're illegal for people under 18. The trouble is that the regulator of the National Lottery themselves have done assessments on this and gone in and, had a look at, well, just how often will a shop assistant actually turn someone down. So the National Lottery regulator have conducted two what they call sort of, test purchase rounds, one in 2018 and one in 2024. In 2018, 37% of children would have been successful. Now, there has been a decline in that, but by 2024, the figure had declined to 29%. But effectively, the regulator's own research is indicating that practically 3 out of 10 times that a child goes into a shop and tries to buy a scratch card, they're probably going to be successful, and that is a huge worry. And the reason why it's such a worry is because when you go to sort of your corner shop or your petrol station, to grab sweets on the way to school or something like that, and you walk up to the counter, you are often being bombarded by National Lottery advertising. As you say, you've got this huge sort of plastic case full of lottery scratch cards. There's probably somewhere where you can, fill out the lotto, and there's very likely to be other elements of lotto advertising, both inside and outside the shop. As well as that, there's often a video screen now. I don't know if you've noticed that in any shops, but the video screen sort of on a loop showing National Lottery advertising continually behind the counter. It's really disconcerting because it's all sort of, right next to where the crisps and chocolate and things are, or even if the child is trying to be healthy and buy an apple and a pint of milk, they go up to the counter and what are they faced with?
Like it only really registered with me recently that all these National Lottery scratch cards and the National Lottery, they are a form of gambling. And when you go into a shop or a garage or whatever, and these cards are right beside the tills, and they are like very extremely colourful. So, can you give me a summary, Frank, of what you're calling for?
Yeah, well, I suppose
I know you've already mentioned the logo of the National Lottery should change, but as regards, just in general,
go
ahead,
yeah, absolutely. No, I suppose in relation to scratch cards, what I would love to see, first of all, is them put out of sight. If an adult wants to buy a scratch card, that's their business. But it should be like tobacco, shouldn't be visible to children, certainly shouldn't be right up there front and central as someone tries to, buy whatever item it is. It's a nudge, do you know what I mean? Or a sludge to sort of to buy them. I also think the cheapest National Lottery is far too accessible scratch card. The cheapest National Lottery scratch card is far too easy for children to be able to buy because it just costs €1. When we started to control tobacco, one of the things we did was we stopped selling single cigarettes, and then we stopped selling 10 packs of cigarettes, because it was just too easy to buy them. And yet we still have €1 scratch cards. Those have to go. They need to be taken away from the till and put out of sight like tobacco is. The other thing we'd like to see, some of the other things we'd like to see, as well as the Lotto logo change that I mentioned, we'd just like to see an absolute reduction in marketing. Some of the Scandinavian countries have done this. They've consciously and deliberately toned down their marketing because they were concerned over the negative impacts of gambling. We'd like also, as well as this, to have much more responsible marketing. They need to move the lotto draw on a Saturday and a Wednesday to after the 9 p.m. watershed. And they need to just reduce the volume and timing of a lot of their advertising. We have the new Gambling Regulation Act 2024, which is slowly going to be rolled out and will curtail a lot of gambling advertising. The trouble is, the National Lottery is exempt all of this. So the way things stand at the moment, they can continue to advertise basically day or night, radio or TV, wherever they want. And that's just inappropriate.
So if what you're calling for is going to be brought in, it would need to be done above the National Lottery regulator. Would it need to be done by either the senior minister or the Minister of State for Justice, would it?
Yes, I think it would. For it to be definitive, it would require legislation. I do have concerns about the Office of the Regulator of the National Lottery. Another report that me and my colleagues did, we looked at 11 years of reports of the Office of the National Regulator, and I suppose we found it extremely disconcerting that when you look at those reports, there's almost no mention of the word gambling. they never mentioned the word addiction. The emphasis is always on play and playing, on winning and prizes and good causes. But, you know, as we were saying just a few minutes ago, fundamentally, it's a form of gambling. So how can they not be addressing this properly? So yeah, we would be looking for legislation to really regulate the National Lottery in a stronger way, or perhaps an easier method, because we know how long legislation can take, or, you know, precise and in-depth legislation takes. An easier approach might be to simply bring the National Lottery under the purview of the gambling regulator. As I say, at the moment, it's completely separate. But with a very, very minor amendment to legislation, you could take out all of the exemptions that relate to the National Lottery and have the legislation which has already been passed, you know, regulating both the other gambling firms and the National Lottery.